Obinna sat on the edge of his narrow bed, staring at the letter that had just arrived from immigration. It was cold and official. The kind of paper that didn't care how hard you'd worked or how far you'd come. He read it again, slower this time. Notice of removal, 30 days. His chest tightened. The words felt heavier than the paper they were printed on. He stood up slowly, stepping over the half-unpacked boxes in the corner of his small apartment in Toronto. It still didn't feel like home, not after 3 years. Not even after all the sacrifices. Through the window, snow started to fall again, light and quiet. But inside him, everything was loud. His breath. His thoughts. His fear. That evening, he made the call. "Papa, it's me," he said, trying to sound normal. His father's voice crackled through the line from Enugu, Nigeria. "Or, Obinna. How is work? I told Pastor Amodi that you will send the money for the roofing next week." Obinna closed his eyes. He didn't have the heart to tell them. "Not yet. I'm trying," he said softly. "Things are tight right now, but I'll manage." Then his mother's voice came on, bright and warm. "My son. Your sister has applied to nursing school. We are praying for your papers to come through soon. Keep pushing, okay?" "Yes, Mama," he replied, the lie bitter in his mouth. "God will make a way." When the call ended, he sat in silence, phone still in hand. His parents had given everything for his future. They believed he had made it. But he was about to be sent back with nothing. 2 days later, Obinna went to church. It wasn't just about faith, it was also routine, something to hold on to. The Pentecostal service was loud, filled with drums and clapping. Pastor is thundered from the pulpit about divine breakthroughs. After the service, Obinna waited near the back pews. He was there to see Adis, the pastor's daughter, his girlfriend. They had been together for 6 months, planning a future, maybe even marriage. But she wasn't alone. He saw her outside, by the side of the church, with a man he didn't recognize. Their closeness was unmistakable. She laughed, touching the man's arm the way she used to touch his. Obinna froze. Later, when he confronted her, she didn't deny it. "I didn't ask you to wait for me," she said coldly. "You can't even take care of yourself, Obinna. I need a man who has a future." His chest burned. The church, the hope, the love, it all collapsed in that moment. The cold at night crept in through the cracks in the window. Obinna lay in bed, the immigration letter on the floor beside him, Adi's words ringing in his ears. His stomach was empty, but his heart was heavier. He took out the bottle of pills he had hidden in the drawer. Painkillers from an old injury. He didn't count them. He just swallowed. He lay back, hoping the ache in his chest would end with sleep. But it didn't. It was the sound of banging, desperate, loud, that pulled him back. His neighbor, Mrs. Chinelo, had heard something through the thin wall. She was screaming his name, calling 911. The door burst open. Faces. Bright lights. Cold air. Then nothing. When Obinna woke up, it was 2 days later. He was back in his apartment, pale and weak, lying on the couch. Beside him, seated in the only other chair, was an older man with sunken eyes and a raspy cough. His name was Mr. Dyke, the landlord. Most tenants called him just Mr. T. "I didn't think you'd make it," Mr. T said in a low voice. "You scared that woman half to death." Obinna sat up slowly. He could barely speak. "You're not the first I've seen give up," Mr. T said, eyes on the floor. "But giving up doesn't mean they stop chasing you. Immigration doesn't care if you die, they'll just send your body home." Obinna didn't respond. Mr. T looked at him for a long time. Then he added, "You want a way out of this? I might have something. But it comes at a price." The following week, Obinna accompanied Mr. T to the hospital. It wasn't out of friendship. It was something heavier. Mr. T had asked him to come, and after what happened, Obinna couldn't say no. They waited in a quiet corner of the oncology wing. The walls smelled of antiseptic and stale air. Mr. T sat still, his legs stretched out, coughing quietly into a handkerchief already stained with blood. When the doctor finally entered, the words came with no cushion. "The cancer has spread to your lungs and liver," she said. "I'm sorry, Mr. Dyke. There's nothing more we can do but manage the symptoms." Obinna looked at Mr. T. The old man didn't flinch. "How long?" he asked. "Months. Maybe weeks." There was a silence. Even the humming lights above seemed to pause. "Thank you, doctor," Mr. T said calmly. Then he stood, slow but steady. Outside in the hallway, he leaned against the wall and turned to Obinna. "I don't want to die with regrets," he said. That evening, they sat at the kitchen table in Mr. T's apartment downstairs. A pot of water boiled on the stove, untouched. "She hasn't spoken to me in 8 years, Mr. T said. Her name is Nkiru. My daughter. Only family I've got left." He slid a folded photo across the table. Obinna picked it up. A younger woman in her 20s, smiling with cautious eyes. There was sadness behind them. "I worked in immigration for almost 30 years, Mr. T continued. I know things. Know people. If you can find her, convince her to see me before I die. I'll make some calls. The right ones. I can stop your deportation." Obinna felt his throat tighten. It was the kind of offer that sounded too good to be true. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you're desperate," Mr. T said plainly. "And because I've seen what you're willing to do when there's no hope left." Obinna stared at the photo. He didn't know this woman. But she was now tied to his survival. That night, Obinna lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Was it right to use someone's pain as a bargaining chip? He didn't know what had happened between Mr. T and Nkiru, only that something had gone wrong. Deeply wrong. Could he chase her down, drag her back to a man she'd abandoned, just to save himself? His phone buzzed. A message from his brother in Nigeria: "Send anything you can. Papa is getting weaker." Obinna closed his eyes. The line between right and wrong blurred when your family's survival depended on it. 3 days later, he stood in line at the immigration office. The waiting room was packed. Faces filled with anxiety. Silence heavier than noise. When his number was called, he stepped up to the counter. A young woman scanned his ID, then tapped on her keyboard. "You're due to leave Canada in 22 days, she said without looking up. "You receive travel details by mail within a week." He nodded, lips tight. "You still have the right to appeal," she added, almost mechanically. "But appeals are rarely granted at this stage." Outside, the cold wind slapped his face. He walked home with the reminder pulsing in his head. 22 days. The days blurred into motion. Obinna picked up odd jobs wherever he could. Shoveling snow outside stores. Cleaning a restaurant kitchen at night. Delivering newspapers before dawn. He slept on buses sometimes, too tired to make it home. Every evening, he marked a red X on the calendar pinned above his bed. 22 days. 21. 20. 19. Each tick felt like a step closer to the edge. At night, he kept the photo of Nkiru on the table beside him. He stared at it like a map, trying to figure out where to go. Then, finally, a lead came. It was an old woman named Mama Keji, who used to live on the second floor before her daughter moved her to the suburbs. Obinna ran into her outside the corner store, where she was bundled up in a thick coat and bright blue scarf. After a few minutes of polite greetings, Obinna brought up Nkiru's name, using the photo. Mama Keji squinted. "Oh, that one. Quiet girl. She used to help me carry my groceries." "You knew her?" Obinna asked quickly. "She lived with her father, yes. But something happened. One day she vanished. I heard later she worked at a salon on Dundas, or was it Queen Street? Somewhere around there. But that was long ago. It wasn't much. But it was more than he had. He thanked her, clutching the photo like it might burn through his fingers. It was a direction, at least. That weekend, Obinna followed the thread to a bar someone at the salon had mentioned. Used to hang around here sometimes, the stylist said. Kind of artsy crowd. The bar was loud, drowning in music. Flashing lights made it hard to see faces. He stood by the door, scanning the crowd. Then he saw her. Same hair. Same posture. Even the same earrings as in the photo. He pushed through, heart thudding. Nkiru, he called. The woman turned, confused. She looked like her, but only in shadow and distance. Up close, the differences were clear. Wrong eyes. Different smile. Do I know you? She asked, annoyed. I'm sorry, Obinna mumbled, stepping back. She rolled her eyes and turned away. It was another dead end. Outside, snow fell harder. Obinna kept searching. He started visiting community centers, waiting outside job programs, lingering near drop-in clinics where young women came and went. A contact at a shelter said she might still be in the area, maybe using a different name. One cold afternoon, in a coffee shop near Blow Street, he spotted her through the window. She walked past slowly, head down, a scarf wrapped tight around her neck. His heart jumped. He rushed outside, dodging a man with a stroller. Nkiru, he shouted. But the crowd swallowed her. By the time he reached the sidewalk, she was gone. He stood there for a long moment, chest rising fast, the photo still in his coat pocket. It was her. He was sure this time. That night, he returned to Mr. T's apartment. The old man was in bed, the TV playing some late-night news, volume low. The room smelled like ointment and damp clothes. I saw her, Obinna said quietly. But I lost her in the crowd. Mr. T's eyes lit up, just for a second. Then the weariness took over again. She's here, Obinna added. She's not far. But she's hiding. Mr. T nodded slowly. She has every reason to hide, he murmured. Obinna waited, but the man didn't explain. Instead, he looked at the ceiling and said, I don't want to die without saying what I should have said a long time ago. Obinna didn't ask questions. He simply left the room and closed the door gently behind him. That night, Obinna lay on a stained mattress, and memories of home flooded him. His father, in the dim light of a kerosene lamp, pushing a few wrinkled naira notes into his hand before the airport ride. We are sending you to carry all our hope, his mother had said, eyes wet with pride. The years that followed were hard. Cold apartments. Dishwashing jobs. Studying immigration forms late at night. The guilt of not being able to send more money home. He remembered his sister's voice on the phone. Obinna, please. Papa needs medicine. Everything he had done, every lie he had swallowed, every corner he had cut, was because of them. He had no room to fail. The next Sunday, Obinna didn't sit in the main hall during service. He waited until after, near the office behind the sanctuary. Pastor Emmanuel was an older man, quieter than most Pentecostal preachers. His face had lines that looked like they came from both laughter and grief. Obinna explained everything, Mr. T's deal, the search for Nicole, the deportation letter, and the growing weight on his chest. When he finished, Pastor Emmanuel sat in silence for a moment, hands folded on his desk. You want to know if God would approve of this? He finally asked. Obinna nodded slowly. The pastor leaned forward. Then ask yourself this, are you helping her so you can stay, or are you staying so you can help her? Obinna didn't answer. Pastor Emmanuel sighed. We don't always get to fix people. But we can choose compassion. And we can choose truth. 3 days later, Obinna spotted her outside a community center, just as people were trickling out of a resume workshop. She was wearing a dark coat and a knitted hat pulled low. But he knew it was her. Nkiru, he called. She froze but didn't turn. Nkiru, he said again, louder this time, moving closer. She turned slowly, her face blank. It's Nicole now, she said. Obinna hesitated. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Who sent you? She snapped. He tried to explain about Mr. T, the cancer, the photo, but her eyes hardened. You can tell him I don't owe him anything, she said. Not my time. Not my pain. Not even my face. Then she turned and walked away. The door closed behind her like a gavel. Obinna stood there, cold wind pressing against his coat. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. But her words had weight, like stones dropped in deep water. He wanted to run after her, to ask why, to explain he wasn't doing this for Mr. T, not entirely. But she'd made it clear. This wasn't just distance. It was something deeper. A wound. Maybe a betrayal. He reached into his pocket and looked at the old photo again. She didn't look like that anymore. That night, Obinna didn't sleep. Instead, he sat at the public library until it closed, using one of the old desktop computers. He searched everything he could under Mr. T's full name, Timothy Dyke, former immigration officer. There wasn't much, but he pieced things together. Several old cases. Some complaints filed, but closed. A forced retirement after an internal investigation. Nothing criminal on record, but enough red flags to raise questions. Then he found something buried in a PDF from a 2013 legal newsletter. Allegations of abuse of power, including misconduct involving personal connections to claimants. Obinna leaned back. Something was wrong. He could feel it now, crawling under his skin. 2 days later, Obinna came home to flashing red lights outside the apartment building. An ambulance. He rushed inside and found the paramedics wheeling Mr. T down the hallway, oxygen mask over his mouth. He looked smaller than before, his hands trembling. Timothy. Obinna called. The old man turned his head weakly. No hospitals, he mumbled through the mask. I said no. But the medics didn't slow down. Obinna followed them to the street, watching as they slid the stretcher into the back of the ambulance. The door slammed shut. He stood there, alone again in the cold, wondering if this was the end of everything. The hospital room was quiet except for the beeping machines and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Obinna sat beside the bed, watching Mr. T struggle to breathe through a mask. The man's face was pale, and the bones in his hands showed clearly beneath the skin. She hasn't come, has she? Mr. T asked, voice muffled but urgent. No, Obinna said gently. Not yet. Timothy reached up, grasping his wrist weakly. Then you keep trying, he said. Don't let me die without seeing her. Just once. I don't care what she says. Just get her to me. He didn't explain why. He didn't offer details. Just desperation. Obinna nodded, but inside, the questions were multiplying. The next day, Obinna received a message from a contact he'd met at one of the community centers, a young social worker named Solina. She had overheard him asking questions and promised to check a few things quietly. The text came at midnight. She's using the name Nicole Dyke. Lives above the laundromat on Jane and Blow. Unit 3C. Obinna stared at the screen, heart pounding. Finally, a real address. He didn't sleep. Just waited for morning light. Nicole opened the door a crack. Her eyes narrowed when she saw him. I told you to leave me alone. I'm sorry, Obinna said. But please. Just 5 minutes. She stared at him, unreadable. The hallway was silent. Then she opened the door wider. 5 minutes, she said. Not 1 second more. He stepped inside. The apartment was small, clean, with books stacked near the windows and a desk cluttered with art supplies. It smelled like jasmine tea and incense. Nicole didn't sit. She crossed her arms and waited. I'm not here to force anything, Obinna said. But he's dying. He's scared. And he keeps asking for you. Nicole's eyes didn't soften. I'm not the one he should be asking, she said quietly. He knows what he did. Obinna didn't push. He just stood there, listening. Nicole didn't give full details. But she didn't need to. There were things, she said, staring at the floor. Things that shouldn't happen in any house, let alone your own. Her voice cracked, just once. I ran away when I was 16. And no one came looking. No one asked why. Obinna felt a chill go through him. She didn't use the words. But the truth was in her eyes, her posture, her silence. I built a life without him, she said. I survived. He doesn't get to ask me for comfort now. Back on the street, Obinna walked in a daze. He had come to Canada for a better life. But now he was stuck between a man desperate to make peace before death, and a woman whose life had been shattered by that same man. And his own future, his family's survival, was tangled up in their broken past. He wanted to scream. To run. To forget the whole thing. But the letter was still in his pocket. Final removal date confirmed. He had 12 days left. 12 days to choose between helping Timothy die with peace, or respecting Nicole's right to heal in silence. It arrived on a Tuesday morning. The envelope was thin, government-issued, and final. Removal confirmed, you are scheduled for deportation on the 14th of this month. Obinna read the word slowly. The world around him seemed to go quiet. There were no more appeals. No more interviews. 11 days. He sat on the bed, the paper trembling in his hands. His chest felt tight again. But this time, he didn't reach for the pills. He had made a promise. And promises had weight. The post office was nearly empty when he walked in, the cold wind still clinging to his coat. He filled out the wire transfer form carefully. It wasn't much, just $120 from the cleaning job he had done the past weekend, but it would help buy his father's medicine. The clerk stamped the receipt. As he stepped outside, he whispered under his breath, even if I fail here, they must not suffer. That was the line he couldn't cross. He would not return home as a man who ran from his responsibility. He didn't plan to see Adiz again. But fate, or something like it, placed her on the bus that day. She was seated near the back, phone in hand. Her face changed when she saw him. He gave a small nod, started to walk past, but she touched his arm. Obinna, wait. They got off together at the next stop and walked in silence. She spoke first. I heard what happened. With the suicide attempt. I didn't know it was that bad. He didn't want her pity. You made your choice, he said. I'm not angry anymore. Just tired. She blinked, looking like she had more to say. But he was already turning away. Some chapters don't need closure, they just need to end. Nicole called him the next evening. If I agree to see him, she said, it will be on my terms. Obinna held the phone tightly. No hospitals. No beds. No, my child, nonsense. We meet in a neutral place. And he listens. Okay, Obinna said. If he tries to control the conversation or spin it, I walk. I'll make sure he doesn't, Obinna promised. A pause. This is not for him, she added. It's for me. To say what I never said. Then she hung up. At the hospital, Obinna explained Nicole's conditions. Timothy was sitting up that day, more alert, his oxygen tube taped gently to his nose. She wants to control it, he scoffed, voice raspy. After all these years, now she wants to dictate how this ends. Obinna didn't flinch. She's giving you a chance, one chance. And if you care at all, you'll take it. Timothy stared at him for a long moment. I'm still her father, he muttered. And that's exactly why you don't get to choose anymore, Obinna replied. The silence between them stretched. But finally, Timothy nodded. Set it up, he said. Obinna didn't want to dig further. But something inside him wouldn't rest. The pieces didn't fit. Nicole's pain. Timothy's silence. The fear under every word. He went back to the library. This time, he searched for more than public records. He contacted an old friend who worked part-time as a legal assistant. Quietly, carefully, they helped him locate sealed court references connected to Timothy's forced retirement. No charges. But internal findings suggested unlawful conduct toward a minor family member, language vague but damning. Obinna felt sick. All this time, he'd been chasing a reunion. Now he saw what Nicole had been running from. He closed the browser, shut the file, and walked outside into the wind. Everything had changed. Obinna stayed up all night. The deportation date was now only days away. He could still back out. Let Nicole live in peace. Let Timothy die alone. He paced his room. If he walked away, he would lose everything: his stay, his shot at a future, the support his family depended on. If he forced this meeting, he might reopen a wound Nicole had spent her whole life trying to close. He thought of his father's voice. His mother's quiet prayers. His sister's hospital bills. Tears filled his eyes. He sat down and whispered, "God, what do I do?" The next morning, he took out a notebook. Not for himself. For Timothy. If the old man truly wanted forgiveness, he would need the words, real ones. Honest. No excuses. No hiding. Obinna wrote slowly, crossing things out, starting again, then letting the truth come true. He imagined what Nicole needed to hear. "I know what I did. I broke you. And no father should. I do not ask you to forget or to heal me. I only want to face what I did, with nothing in my hands but regret." He didn't know if Timothy would use it. But he had to try. Nicole met him on the steps of the community center. She was wearing the same knitted hat, her eyes steady. "Where?" she asked. "There's a small room in the library. Private, but open to the public. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. She nodded. "You'll bring him?" "He'll be there," Obinna said. "He's very weak now." Nicole looked away, her jaw clenched. "I'm not doing this for him," she said. "I know," Obinna replied. "It's for you." She didn't speak again. Just walked off. The next day, the library's small community room was quiet. No one else around. Just a round table and 3 chairs. Timothy sat hunched, pale and trembling, wrapped in a coat, oxygen tank beside him. Obinna had helped him in, then stepped back. Nicole arrived 5 minutes later. She stood at the door for a moment, then entered without a word. Her eyes flicked toward Timothy, then quickly away. No hugs. No tears. Just silence. Timothy tried to speak, then coughed violently. Nicole waited. Finally, in a hoarse voice, he said, "I have no right to ask for anything. But I wanted to see your face. Once. To say, I'm sorry." Nicole didn't move. "I wrote something," he added, reaching into his pocket. She didn't take it. But she listened as he read the apology Obinna had written for him, his hands shaking, voice catching. When he finished, he set the page down on the table and looked at her. "I won't ask you to forgive me. I just wanted to know you lived." Nicole looked at him for a long time. Then she whispered, "I lived. Without you." And stood to leave. Nicole didn't say goodbye. She paused at the door, looked back once, and said, "I'll come once more. Before the end. That's all I can give." Timothy gave a weak nod, eyes full of something between sorrow and relief. Nicole turned and walked out. Obinna stayed behind, helping Timothy gather his things. Neither spoke. But something between them had shifted. Not peace. Not healing. But truth. Sometimes, that's the only thing left to hold on to. 3 days later, Obinna came home to find an envelope slid under his door. Inside was a typed letter and a signed affidavit, formal language and federal letterhead. Timothy had kept his promise. Despite his illness, he had filed a formal motion with the immigration office, invoking an obscure clause through his former contacts. Attached was a character reference, citing Obinna's extraordinary act of civic responsibility and a request for a humanitarian stay of removal. At the bottom was Timothy's signature, shaky, but clear. Obinna exhaled, chest tight with hope. Now, all he could do was wait. The day of the appointment, Obinna sat in the waiting room, his palm sweating against the metal chair. His number was called. He stood, walked to the counter, handed over the documents. The officer took them, flipped through silently, then left for what felt like an eternity. When she returned, her expression was unreadable. "You'll be contacted within 5 business days," she said. "Your removal order is under review." Obinna nodded slowly. "Does that mean?" "I said under review," she repeated. "That's all I can tell you for now." Outside, the cold air hit him hard. But for the first time in months, it didn't feel like the end. It felt like waiting for life to start again. It happened quietly. 2 nights later, Obinna came downstairs with soup, but the nurse met him at the door. "He passed this evening," she said gently. "Very peaceful." Obinna stood in the hallway, unsure what to do with his hands. Inside the room, Timothy's oxygen tank was still hissing softly, like it hadn't noticed. On the nightstand, the apology letter still sat folded beside Nicole's old photo. Obinna didn't touch anything. He just stood there and whispered, "Rest." Then turned and left. They met once more, outside the hospital, after she came to see the body. Nicole's face was calm, colder than grief, but not angry. "Thank you," she said. "For not forcing anything." "I didn't do it for him," Obinna replied. "I did it because it needed to be done." She nodded. "I don't know what your future looks like," she said. "But mine doesn't include contact. I hope you understand." "I do." She extended her hand. He took it. Then she walked away, disappearing into the winter dusk, her ship folding back into the world she'd built alone. Obinna's phone buzzed the next morning. The area code made his heart leap. He picked up. "Obinna." His father's voice. Older, shakier than he remembered. "Yes, Papa. It's me." There was a pause, and then the sound of a soft weeping. "You are still there," his father whispered. "I'm still here." From the background, his mother's voice, "Tell him we are praying. Tell him he must not give up." He closed his eyes, pressing the phone tighter to his ear. "I won't," he said. "Not now." Obinna stood at the door to the apartment building. The sky above was pale and grey, the morning just beginning to brighten. He looked up at it, not smiling, not crying. Just breathing. The streets were wet from melted snow, the air sharp but bearable. In his coat pocket, the deportation letter, still not rescinded, still hanging, but no longer crushing him. Because he had told the truth. Because he had done the right thing. And whatever came next, he would face it as a man who had not chosen the easy way. Obinna stepped into the cold. Not saved by a scam. Saved by the truth.